Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Living Your Bold Life interview series, where we're learning how to stand up for you and take bold action now. Today, we're talking with Glenn Harrold. Glenn is an author, musician, and experienced clinical hypnotherapist who has helped thousands of clients get over a wide range of stress-related problems. He has combined his hypnotherapy skills with an extensive recording knowledge to produce a uniquely effective series of high-quality hypnosis recordings that have sold over 8 million copies and are well established as the UK's best-selling self-help audio titles of all time. Welcome, Glenn.
Hi, Heather.
Hello there. Thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
Well, let's start by having you tell us a bit about the journey to doing the work you're doing.
Okay, well, I'm a hypnotherapist and an author. I write books and make audio recordings. And I suppose I'm best known for the meditation and hypnosis recordings that I've made over the last 20 years. And yeah, I've been very, very fortunate that I've sold many millions of them and they've reached people all around the world. And I get this amazing feedback from people, really incredible every day. Even now they're on the App Store and on people's phones. I get young kids sending messages to my office saying that they feel more confident at school. And so it's fantastic. It's just been such a great journey, because when I started, I used to make cassette recordings. The first recordings in the sort of late 90s were on cassette. I used to make homemade recordings. So I'd literally record onto a cassette machine, then duplicate it. I had homemade display stands that I used to deliver into local shops, and I sold them on a fiver on sale or return, which is like $3 or $4 or $6. And they started to sell pretty much straight away. And in the UK at that time, there wasn't too many making hypnosis and meditation recordings. It was mainly the recordings we had in the UK were from American authors. And so there was a market there for a British author to make good quality hypnosis and meditation recordings. And because my background is in music, I was a musician, a gigging musician before I became a hypnotherapist. I kind of married the two and made recordings that were technically half good. They sounded decent. And so from there, I used to drive into local shops, and they started to sell pretty much straight away. So it was kind of an epiphany, because I realized that suddenly if people are buying them in my little town in the south of England, then they buy them all over the country and possibly all over the world. And so I used to do a lot of meditation on that, the abundance thing, when I was starting out and projecting goals out there. And the story I sometimes tell is that when I very first started, I borrowed £1,000 from the bank to get nicer displays, because the ones I had were little homemade jobbies and they fall apart. So I borrowed £1,000 off the bank, and literally as soon as I got nice professional stands and I got them into more stores, the whole thing took off. And within like 3 years, I had 5 staff working for me, and big offices, and we were turning over like £500,000 at the time. And my PA said to me one day, she said, "What's this £36 coming out of the bank account each month?" And I said, "Oh, that was the £1,000 loan that I borrowed 3 years ago. I was still paying it off." And the whole thing had just, taken off. So it was really, I was in the right place at the right time. I was meditating. My goal was, I'm always in the right place at the right time. Abundance comes freely and naturally to me. All of my needs are constantly met. I used to affirm that all the time. And sure enough, I was lucky enough to meet the right people at the right time and step into the right place. Waterstone's a big chain store. They suddenly took them on. They took my range off me, and then they were all over the country and selling in the hundreds of thousands. So yeah, that's the power of it.
How do you go from a gigging musician to hypnotherapist expert? I mean, like that's I love it. It's the gigging hypnotherapist. But how do you transition into that?
Well, I was when I was in my late teens, I was in a band called the Sugar Ray 5, and we had a brief taste of success in the UK. We won a national pop competition, and we were on TV a lot for a short space of time, and it was all sex and drugs and rock and roll back in that day. They didn't last long. It came and went like Halley's Comet. We didn't quite have the momentum that you two had. You know, it kind of fizzled out before it really got going, but we had a taste of it. So later on, I did the cabaret circuit. I was playing in pubs and bars and clubs, and we used to do cover songs. And I worked really hard at that, did that for 7 years. And it was one night we were sharing the bill with a stage hypnotist. And it was while I was watching him backstage, you know, use hypnosis to manipulate the audience and do the crazy things that he was doing with them, that it really sparked my interest in it. And it was from there that I wanted to learn it, but I didn't want to do the stage thing. I wanted to learn to kind of heal a lot of my dysfunction that had come from my childhood, because I had a very dysfunctional childhood where I, you know, run away from home as a kid. I got expelled from school. I was in trouble with the law, all that kind of thing. So it was, I had a lot of negative programming that I wanted to fix. So when I saw the stage hypnotist using hypnosis on the audience, it kind of really sparked my interest. So from there, I did a 2-year diploma with the British School of Clinical Hypnosis back in the 90s, mid-90s. And I loved it. I just took to it like a duck to water. And, you know, I had the right sort of voice for it and the right empathy, you know, because I'd struggled so much in my life before that. You know, I had real empathy for people because I'd been at the bottom of the heap, believe me. You know, when I was 17, my liver packed up because I'd totally smashed it to bits. I'd been boozing so much that my liver gave up on me. And I literally woke up when I was 17 yellow. My skin had turned yellow. And so I'd been at the rock bottom. You know, I struggled to earn money, to have relationships, everything. You know, it was a real struggle in my younger life. So when I found this tool that I could use for healing, it was like a real epiphany, and it kind of lit me up. And so I loved it. And I also loved, once I got cleared a lot of my own issues and the dysfunction that was holding me back, I then really enjoyed helping other people and helping them clear and move forward. And I still love that today. You know, my medium is through my recordings, and I love that. I love the feedback I get from people, and I put my heart and soul into everything I put out there. I really do, because I know how effective it can be. And we live in this wonderful age where you can make recordings and send them out all over the world. It's fantastic.
When it works well, our technology is pretty impressive these days, what we can do.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how to stay motivated, you know, like, and how you would use hypnosis and keeping people when you just don't want to get out of bed in the morning. How do you get up and stay motivated?
I think it's always good to come back to goal setting. You know, set yourself targets in life. You know, for me, that was something. As soon as I got into hypnosis and self-hypnosis and the law of attraction, you know, I would always work on setting myself goals in the early days. And for me, it was about creating an abundant life, you know, creating a life where you know, I've got the freedom to live where I want, to having, you know, wonderful, harmonious relationships, you know, happiness, you know, money to spend when I want. It was about all of those things, the combination. You know, I think having one without the other doesn't really work. You need the whole holistic thing. So I used to focus on that a lot and meditate on that and goal set, you know, and be really specific. So I, you know, there was a time when I set myself a goal to have an Aston Martin. You know, I didn't have a cent in the bank. I was completely broke. But when I understood how the law of attraction works, I visualized driving an Aston Martin and feeling the steering wheel and looking out from the inside, you know, the view as I was driving it. And I did that for a good time, you know, and then later on, I got about 10 years later, I got to the point where I was going to buy one from a car showroom up in Birmingham. And just before I went up there, I found the picture of that I used to meditate on. And it was like, oh God, yeah, I meditated on that. And that was my goal. That was my big goal. And I put it aside at some point, but it was still in there. It was in the back of my unconscious mind whirring away. And sure it happened, you know, and most of the goals that I've worked on have come to fruition.
Wow.
the
You
right
became
time.
James Bond.
Bond, yeah. Not quite Daniel Craig's league.
Come on now.
That's another level. Yeah, maybe I should meditate on that one.
so so say a little bit more. So when you say, so you spend time just really, because you described like feeling the steering wheel, and so it's like feeling it as if it's happening is kind of when you say meditating on it.
Yeah, the really important thing is when you're meditating to really, or projecting a goal out there using self-hypnosis, really imagine that it's a reality now, and let every cell in your mind and body resonate with that belief that it's a reality at this moment, because your mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and imagined. So when you're visualizing that and you're absorbing that into your unconscious mind, you're almost like creating a program in there that you're going to work towards on an unconscious level. And it really does work. It's something that I immersed myself in because I was so sick of failure. I was sick of being stuck, being in that downward spiral that it happens it come from my childhood. And it really was, I struggled just to even hold a job down. I just couldn't. I really did struggle. And so I was sick of that so much that by the time I found this, I was hungry to change my life. And when it came along, I grabbed it with both hands, and I really understood the concept of changing your life from the inside out and changing those negative programs that are whirring away, that were given to you by adults in your childhood. You can clear that. You can get rid of it. It's just a program. Sometimes some programs are deeper than others, and I've had some, some very deep ones that have taken me a long time to clear, and I'm still on that road. I'm not fixed. I've never met anyone who's fixed.
No.
It's an ongoing process. It really is. We're all on this path, and this life offers this golden opportunity to clear and to raise our consciousness, raise our vibration, and to live life in a much more abundant space. And everyone's got that opportunity to do it. And because of where I was at, I have friends. I had a friend who got in touch with me recently. I hadn't spoken to him for 30 years, and we lived together in our late teens. And I spoke to him and I said, "How are you getting on?" And he said, "Oh, good." He said, "I can't believe what you're doing." He said, "I've seen your books in the shops and all this kind of thing." He said, "Wow." He said, I said, "What have you been up to?" He said, "Well, I've been in prison for 20 years. And yeah, this was a guy I knocked around with in my teens. That was where I was at then. To be fair, he was like a lovable rogue, but he just kind of he got into a serious drug addiction, and he fueled his drug addiction by borrowing money from banks without their agreement. And so, that was his story. And fortunately, I went in a more positive direction. But anyone, however stuck you are, however down, whatever hole you're in, you can transform your life. Anyone can do this. So that's what I think I'm good at teaching other people and showing them.
Well, what's a skill to start? Like some, that we can start utilizing, to stay grounded and motivated to, someone's sitting at the bottom going, really, we can get out of this. I imagine people are sitting there kind of going, but you've been there, you've gotten it. This can happen for anybody, but what would it be like? Where's a starting place?
The starting place is always within yourself. If you change your internal dynamic and your belief systems, the world will react differently to you. And I think you have to believe that you've got that power to change, the programming, the conditioning, whatever negativity is going on in there, whatever belief systems you've got. If you only think abundance comes to people who are fortunate or lucky, you have to change that. And the way that you do that is that you have to, for me, it was using self-hypnosis. So that's where I'll send you my guide to self-hypnosis, which is, it's not a novel, it's about 5 pages long, and you can learn the basics of it and use that technique to program your mind, to overcome obstacles and also to program yourself with beliefs that are going to help to change your world and transform your life. It's it's something that anyone can do, but you have to put the work in. And the key element in that is that an analogy I always use is, if you wanted to get really fit and toned, you'd work out 4 or 5 times a week, whether that's the gym or whether that's Pilates or whatever it is. You'd have to do that work to get that physical fitness and tone yourself up. And the mind is the same. If you really want to develop a powerful mind and create, transformation in your life, then it's the same principle. You have to use self-hypnosis on a regular basis and, supercharge your goals. But, really, like I say, anyone can do it. And I think you have to get the fire in your belly as well. And another story that comes to mind is, when I was a kid, I grew up with my best mate of when I was a kid was a boy that lived over the road, and he had a very stable family life. His was completely different to mine. My house was like the Wild West. He said later on, he said it was like a Tom and Jerry cartoon. It's crazy.
Wow.
But he had a very stable upbringing. He went into the stock market when he was quite young, and he literally became one of the wealthiest people in the UK. He was on the rich list in the UK.
Wow.
And I met up with him. This was like early 90s. And I met up with him, and I was living 2 miles down the road in the poorest part of London. It was and I was living on the top floor of this tower block, and it was as rough as it gets. It really was. It was terrible. And so I met up with him at that time, and he'd become a multi-millionaire, and I was at the bottom of the heap. And it was, for me, I couldn't have had a bigger motivator than that. Because I thought, what is it? Well, how come we both rocketed to opposite ends of the social scale? He was at the top and I was at the bottom of the heap, and it was a really harsh lesson. But I used that as motivation. It motivated me to get me out of the hole that I was in. And I really looked deep inside myself. What was it that brought me to this point? And so I think for anyone who's really stuck and struggling, you have to look inside and figure out why are you struggling? What is it? If it's a weight issue, or if it's a lack of belief, lack of confidence, there's always a reason behind it. We're not supposed to be like that. We're supposed to be healthy, abundant, fit, and live into a long, ripe old age without any, medical intervention. We're not designed that way, but, we fall into these pitfalls and these traps. But anyone can get out of that. You have to do the self-analysis and look deep inside.
And so would you say that mostly when you're looking in, that the thing that's keeping you stuck is like belief system primarily?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes if you've had a lot of negativity thrown at you in your childhood, you do believe it. I mean, I did when I was kicked out of school when I was 15, and the headmaster told me I was the worst kid he'd had in the school for 10 years. I went off thinking I was stupid, I was lazy, I was, at trouble. I had all of those beliefs in my head. I really believed it. And it wasn't until I got older that I really hit rock bottom, hard. I had a hard landing, that I looked deeper. And I started to see behind all that, behind all the programming. And from there, I was able to then use the techniques, the self-hypnosis techniques, and work with other therapists. Over the years, I've used a lot of different therapies, like, counseling, even ayahuasca, which is something really deep and shamanic. And I've done a lot of clearing in lots of different ways. And I will continue to do that until I'm 90, 100 years old. It's the journey. And I want my vibration to be so good when I check out of this planet that I don't come back to the same family.
You're like,
them, but I'm waving them goodbye in the next one.
Yeah. Well, and I hear just such the importance you said earlier of like believing in in your ability to do it. Of all the things we can do, like none of it matters if we don't believe it. So like this believing we have the power to change.
Yeah. And I think when you use self-hypnosis, the thing to remember is what I said earlier, that your mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. So think of it like you're programming a computer. And if you're taking on board these suggestions that you're confident, you're abundant, you're going to be successful, you're healthy, you're fit, your mind will accept those suggestions without without questioning on them.
Mm-hmm.
So the key is repetition. Continue to do that. Work with that and continue to compound those beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And you may, like with me, the tide didn't turn straight away. I didn't suddenly go from struggle and hardship
Yeah.
suddenly this fantastic life. It took time, but
Mm-hmm.
slowly the small successes got bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I've got the momentum now that carries me forward.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it's really important to recognize the small steps instead of going, none of this works and giving up, because if you don't see the little ones.
That's really important. That's a big part of it. If
Mm-hmm.
you recognize, and be grateful for any small steps forward, and
Yeah.
praise yourself. Don't be afraid to praise yourself for little successes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. If you're a good parent, or you're good at your job, be proud of that. Take some pride from that. And
Mm-hmm.
especially in Britain, people are too quick to put themselves down. It's something in the psyche in Britain. We're not supposed to big ourselves up in any way. So
Mm-hmm.
but it's
Mm-hmm.
important to take pride in what you do in life. If you're just a
Mm-hmm.
conscientious good person, feel good about that. Take
Yeah.
some pride. So
Yeah.
those, because all the small steps build up and they become bigger.
Yeah.
You do it, there's a momentum to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It makes me think of like we're so on the short term, or the quick, reward, instead of
Yeah,
waiting for the longer one. And
absolutely. And
have to,
we've got a whole lifetime to transform.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really, it is a journey where you're just shedding layers. If you're
Mm-hmm.
on the path, you're shedding layers and clearing patterns of behavior that no longer serve you. And
Mm-hmm.
I love doing that. I never tire of finding new ways to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We're all a work in progress as well. Wherever you are, if you're struggling and broke or whatever, or whether you're abundant, successful or whatever, it's just a work in progress. So we can all continue to clear and become lighter and become the person that you're meant to be. You're supposed to
mm-hmm.
be, not who you,
Mm.
not loaded down with conditioning. And
Yeah.
that's the
Oh,
key. Yeah.
oh, lovely. Well, thank you. Well, tell everybody about the gift you have. You started to mention it earlier. What's the gift that you have for everybody?
So you have to remind me, is it the Relax and Sleep Well free recording?
Yes. And then you mentioned the how to
The guide.
self-hypnosis.
Yeah. I'm going to send over a free guide to self-hypnosis, which
That's
is
right.
5 pages long, and you can learn the technique of how to put yourself into a self-hypnotic trance state, a
Mm.
self-induced trance. And the one thing I always say to people when they do that is, sometimes when you're using self-hypnosis or you're being hypnotized by a therapist, it can sometimes feel like not a lot's happening. You're just laying there with your eyes shut. But the thing with the trance state is, what people often miss is that just by laying there and allowing your mind to switch off and become quiet, you are allowing your unconscious mind to open.
Mm.
Even though it doesn't, you're still aware of the room you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and even in a light trance state, which most people go into at first, you can still hear a car outside or the baby crying out downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
You can still hear all that, but you're still receptive to taking on board suggestions. So the
Mm-hmm.
key part of it is, when you take on board a suggestion that I feel, be it I feel confident, or I'm in control of my eating habits, or I
Mm-hmm.
love to exercise, whatever you're taking on board, really feel that affirmation when you say it. Allow your heart energy to get involved. Imagine that you're really, it's resonating through every cell, and it's an absolute reality.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
when you do that, you do take it on board on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And once those suggestions are anchored in your unconscious mind, you then respond to them automatically. You don't even have to think. You just notice these subtle changes.
Mm-hmm.
In the supermarket, you don't buy the cakes. You bypass that, and then you change. Because
Mm-hmm.
those new powerful suggestions are in there. They're in your unconscious. So don't get hung up on the depth of trance, because
Okay.
everyone experiences a different level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key.
Cool.
And so I'm also going to give you send a recording, my Relax and Sleep Well, which is good to use at bedtime because it allows you to mind to switch off.
Yeah.
You can also use affirmations with that. So, you know, towards the end of the recording, it kind of quietens down, and you can, you know, give yourself affirmations. There's also affirmations on the recording.
Nice.
So that's a great way to kind of get used to self-hypnosis and going into that trance.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yay. Well, thank you for being with us. This was lovely to get to chat with you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. And you do have the best, the greatest voice for the recordings.
Oh, thank you.
It's so smooth compared to our American accents.
You know, when I first started, though, because I was born in London, I had a very strong London accent, and people used to say, "Oh, he sounds like a builder," or "He sounds like an East End geezer," you know, like what was his name in Mary Poppins? Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke.
And so I did. I changed it a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Because it was affected. When you come out of hypnotherapy college, they tend to get you to say words like, "Now you're going to relax now." It never quite. I did that on my early recordings, but I've changed it, and now I'm a bit more natural. I speak the way that, you know, just normally, without too much of a London accent, or, you know.
That's lovely.
That's the key. You just learn to hone it.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Thank you, Glenn. And we'll have more interviews tomorrow. Bye for now.